There cannot be a more negative statement than calling Savitri a fictional creation. Savitri a fictional creation. The plain meaning of the adjective fictional is imaginative, imaginary, not truthful, something which has come out from the fancy of the author, which may not have any reality at all in it. One might give a kind of a spin to the adjective fictional by saying that fictional belongs to the category of the literature which comes under the general head fiction, stories, novels, etc. Even if it is a story or a novel, Savitri cannot still be in any sense fictional. Calling Savitri a fictional creation is perhaps one of the most stupid kind of remark that can ever be made about Savitri. To be polite, one can say at the most that it is a very disparaging remark, a very disparaging assessment of Savitri, and the entire Savitri running into 24,000 lines is dismissed in just 2 pages of a certain book, and it is called a fictional creation. Of a certain book, it is a book which is published by the prestigious Columbia University Press of USA, and the book is titled The Lives of Sri Aurobindo, and the author is Peter Hise. The author maintains that he has written this biography of Sri Aurobindo in order to make it presentable, acceptable to the Western set of thinking, Western mind. But in that whole process, he has completely distorted the very life and work of Sri Aurobindo. It is very saddening that such a book should have really come out at all from an author who lives in the very ashram of Sri Aurobindo. Had it been written, such a book, when the mother was present, she would have immediately thrown him out of the ashram. Immediately thrown out of the ashram. She would not accept any negative statement, misconceived statement, false statement made about Sri Aurobindo. The mother herself says that Savitri is Sri Aurobindo's supreme revelation. It is a prophetic vision. It is a supreme revelation. And here is an author who comes and says Savitri is a fictional creation. The book was published 9 years ago, May 2008. And the purported aim was to present Sri Aurobindo to the Western world in the correct perspective, correct undercourse. One wonders how many of the Western thinkers and readers and scholars have gone through this biography, and because of this book, got attracted towards Shaibantu. There doesn't seem to be any. How many copies of these books have been sold? There don't seem to be too many. And yet, the authorities, the powers that be, they refuse to take any action against such an author who calls Shaibantu's work a fictional creation. That is the saddest part of it. Mother would have simply thrown him out of the ashram in the very first instance. This only shows how illiterate the author is, how preposterous his claim of Savitri being a fictional creation is. What was expected was the author going into proper technical details, professional details, details on all the three counts: the thematic contents of Savitri, the poetic inspiration of Savitri, the art and technique of Savitri. He should have gone through all these three aspects, evaluated and presented his professional view. Instead of doing all that, instead of doing nothing of that, he simply, in just 2 pages, calls Savitri a fictional creation. But here is a poetry which is deeply and sublimely mystic spiritual. Here is an art which is the most subtle of its kind in its technique. Here is an inspiration which comes from the overhead planes. Overhead planes, the spiritual planes which climb above the mental plane, the mind, the overhead planes. Higher mind, luminous mind, intuition, overmind. And there is so much of overmind influence and overmind expression in Savitri that one is simply puzzled when one hears that Savitri is a fictional creation. It is in fact a supreme revelation coming straight from the world of the gods over mind. Shaibantu himself maintains insistently through several of his letters to his disciples that what he was trying in Savitri is to bring into English expression the overhead inspiration. It coming from some higher planes of spiritual reality, coming with a triple intensity of substance, vision, rhythm, sense, sight, sound, intensity of substance, vision, rhythm. The lives of Shaibantu has absolutely no inkling of these sources of spiritual inspiration. This spiritual inspiration leading to the mantric word itself, and that is why it is absolutely calamitous to call Savitri a fictional creation. I think without a moment's delay, we should immediately dismiss such a kind of a stupidity which is present in the lives of Shaibantu by Peter Heath. But what is overhead inspiration? What is overhead inspiration? This is a new term which is coined by Shaibantu. In the art of criticism, this is not available anywhere at all, neither in the Eastern tradition nor in the Western studies. What is overhead inspiration? to quote Sri Aurobindo about its poetic movement, this overhead inspiration, it is filled with, or sometimes it seems rode away and lost in a music that is really another unseizable and spiritual secret of movement, another unseizable and spiritual secret of movement. It is that which is seized in the overmind, in the overhead expression. That is the intensity of poetic movement, out of which the great possibility of poetic expression arises. It is where the metrical movement remains as a base, but either enshrines and contains, or is itself contained and flows in an element of greater music which exceeds it, and yet brings out all its possibilities. That the music which exceeds it and yet brings out all its possibilities, that the music fit for the mantra makes itself audible, audible even to our ears. It is the triumph of the embodied spirit over the difficulties and limitations of the physical instruments. Mantra is a triumph over of the spirit, embodied spirit, over the difficulties and limitations of the physical instrument. And the listener seems to be that other vaster and yet identical eternal spirit whom the Upanishad speaks of at the ear of the ear, he who listens to all hearing behind the instabilities of word and speech. It is the profound, inevitable harmonies of his his own thought and vision for which he is listening. The inner being in us, it is he who hears the mantra. It is he who enjoys the mantra. It is he who receives the power of the mantra. It is he who gets the knowledge, all that the mantra is pouring in it. That inner being in us, it is he who has to awaken us, and then only perhaps we might be able to grasp something of the revelation that Savitri is giving to us. The sources of poetic inspiration can be from various levels: spiritual, mystical, occult, inner worlds, lyrical, psychic, with some deeper power of vision and creation. Character of rhythm and expression, with right word at right place and right sound. The substance drawn from any plane, physical, vital, mental, spiritual, but with the living breath of life in it, with all its creative force rushing with dynamism of joy. In his later formulation of the aesthetic theory of poetry, Sri Aurobindo describes 4 planes from where the poetic inspiration can come: higher mind, illumined mind, intuition, and overmind. The last, which is the birthplace of the inspired and inevitable word, it carrying with it the mantric power. These are actually the planes which rise above the mental spiritual plane, climbing all the way up to the universal mind characterized by globality, that is the overmind. Well, Savitri draws its inspiration from the overhead planes. But is Savitri throughout overhead? Is Savitri throughout of the same mint, of the same quality, same grade? Sri Aurobindo himself writes in a letter dated 22nd April 1947. I do not know whether that is always possible in so long a poem as Savitri. Savitri running into 24,000 lines, dealing with so many various heights and degrees and so much varying substance of thought and feeling and descriptive matter and narrative. But that has been my general aim throughout, and it is the reason why I have made so many successive drafts and continued alteration till I felt that I had got the thing intended by the higher inspiration in every line and passage. It is also why I keep myself open to every suggestion from a sympathetic and understanding quarter and weigh it well, rejecting only after due consideration and accepting when I see it to be well founded. But for that, the critic must be one who has seen and felt what is in the thing written. The critic must be one who has seen and felt what is in the thing written. Certainly, this critic who calls Savitri a fictional creature has not seen and felt what is written in it. Not like one who has not felt, not seen anything and understood anything, only the word surface and not even always that. He must be open to this kind of poetry, able to see the spiritual vision it conveys, capable too of feeling the overhead touch when it comes. Sri Aurobindo is speaking of a critic who is sensitive, who has feeling, who can feel the overhead touch, who can feel the overhead touch. But here we have Blockhead who calls Savitri a fictional creation. There has to be a fit reader to understand, to enter into Savitri. There has to be a fit critic to perceive the kind of poetry that is there in Savitri.